I've been wanting to make a Valentine's Day project for a couple of weeks now, and I recently ordered the Always and Forever Charm Pack from Moda Fabrics, and in it came these beautiful fabrics by Deb Strain. I probably played with the charm pack for about an hour before I came up with this final design. I thought about doing half triangle squares, but I didn't want it to be that complicated for this project. I just wanted to be able to throw this on my table and give my children incentive for keeping it clean. So I had just enough of the dark red squares to create this stylized heart in the middle with all of the white fabrics and a couple of the light pink fabrics around the border. I'm going to use the rest of these pink fabrics that are left over. I'm going to cut them into strips to make a scrappy border for the whole table topper. The first thing I'm going to do is take the squares that I've laid out here and turn them into 5 horizontal strips. I am going to use 1/4-inch seams throughout this whole project, and then after I have the 5 strips, I will sew the strips together to make the one big piece of the center. Here's a quick shot of all the strips that I've sewn together, all of the individual squares on each row. And now what I will do is I will take and flip them over right sides together and sew the rows together. Here's one last look at the table topper, all sewn together. Now we are ready to do the scrappy edging. Here is a blow-up of one of the squares, all cut up. You can see that there's 6 equal rectangles that you'll use. These you can discard. The rectangles measure 2.5 by 1.5, and you'll be sewing these together for your scrappy edging. So you need to cut all the rest of your charm squares from your charm pack into these. So in half first, and then into 4 rectangles, 1.5, 1.5, 1.5, and scrap. Here are all the rectangles that I cut out from the remaining charm squares. I've laid them out around the centerpiece of the table topper, just to get an idea of what I had to work with. I am going to take them now and lay them out how I want them to look on the finalized quilt. Another tip that I read, I think on the Moda Bake Shop website, was to throw them all into a great big Ziploc bag and just draw them out one at a time the way that you want them to, the way that you'll sew them together. I like to get a better feel for what the final product will look like and do a little bit of the engineering myself. So I will work on that next. Now I have all of my individual rectangles laid out. You can see it's kind of big because there's no seam allowances in there yet. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to start at the top and the bottom, and I'm going to sew the top and the bottom together first, and then sew them onto the quilt, and then do the sides because those are going to be a little bit longer. So all I do is I take them in order and I just make a stack that I'm going to take to my sewing machine, because then I don't have to keep getting up and figuring out what to do. So stack them up. And this is the stack that you'll take to your sewing machine. Here is your pile of scraps that are stacked up from the top or the bottom. I just have them one on top of each other. The first thing you do is you take the first 2 scraps. Take the first 2 scraps and you're going to flip them over right sides together. And we're going to sew the 1/4-inch seam all the way across so that when we get done we're going to have 1-inch rectangles. I like to snip off all my threads as I go because then that saves me time later. I've learned that lesson the hard way. I don't like to go back and do it at the end. You take your 3rd scrap, you put it face down on your 2nd. You can see I don't necessarily pin here just because it's such a small piece. Open it up. Put your fourth piece on top, face down, right sides together on your third piece. And so. And you keep doing this until you get to the end and all 23 pieces are sewn together and you have this cute scrappy fabric. When you're done with each row, make sure you go and press the seams. I press them all in one direction, usually in opposite directions, so that the seams aren't all heavy on one side. But you'll have a whole row of rectangles. I've got the top and the bottom rows of the scrappy border done. You can see it lines up just about perfectly on each side. Up at the top, I've already turned it over right sides together, and I decided to pin because having such small pieces so close together makes it a little bit more springy than I'm used to, and I want to make sure that it stays pretty evenly distributed all the way across, and I don't want to have to eyeball that while I'm sewing. So I do just have it pinned in about 5 places. Started in the center and then worked my way out like I do with most things in quilting. And then I will just take the bottom and do the same thing. Just flip it over and line up the bottom edges and pin it together. And then again, using the 1/4 inch seam, sew it together. I sewed the 2 side pieces together just like I did the top and the bottom. And you can see this side laid out so that it reaches the ends of both sides. On the other side, I have pinned it together so that you can see it reaches and it goes all the way to the ends of the other border, which is why it was a little bit longer. I ended up using 23 rectangles along the top and the bottom and 27 rectangles along each of the 2 sides. So as soon as I sew this together, it will pretty much be done and ready to be quilted and bound. Here's my finished quilt topper. You can see the heart in the middle, backing out, and you can see the pretty scrappy edging all around the sides. I used all but one of the little rectangle pieces on the scrappy edging. The rest of the charm pack was used. It was a fun project to acquaint myself with the possibilities of charm packs. Hope you have as much fun with this project as I did. Happy Valentine's Day.
Thank you for watching this video. If you like what you saw, please take a second to click the like button now and to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Also, please check out my blog at www.areformedheathen.blogspot.com. Happy crafting!